Welcome back here. Time is now 6:14. It was a shock to the sports world when football star J.J. Watt had to have his heart shocked back into rhythm.
Yeah, the Arizona Cardinals player recently went into atrial fibrillation, a heart condition that can cause stroke, even death. A-fib affects more than 5 million adults in the U.S. That includes a San Diego woman and a former D1 tennis star. In a story you'll see only here on CBS 8, I sat down with her and looked into the signs of A-fib and how to avoid it.
Played tennis for Torrey Pines High School.
Candace Donahoe
We were superstars.
is all heart.
We had 6 nationally ranked tennis players on our team.
Before ruling the tennis courts at Torrey Pines High in the 90s, she vividly recalls that moment as a kid
I fell in love with it.
when her heart filled with the competitive spirit.
My dad used to be a hockey player, and he made it into a game. Said, try to pass me, and on the tennis court. And so when he made it a game for me as a child, all of a sudden I realized I was super competitive.
Sinking her heart into every serve and return, the fierce competitor
I'm a Hoosier.
got a D1 scholarship to Indiana University.
We won the Big Tens when I was there.
In 2001, Candace was training in San Diego's finest half marathon.
20 yards in front of the finish line, I collapsed into the chain link fence. I woke up on a stretcher with the paramedics all around me.
She was originally told the blackout was due to dehydration, but the problems persisted. For the next 2 years, Candace felt out of shape, out of breath, even collapsing a few more times. It was after a jog when her dad, a doctor, noticed her face was very pale.
So he, checked my wrist, and he couldn't count my pulse.
After several doctor's visits and opinions, Candace eventually saw an electrophysiologist, a doctor specializing in the heart's electrical system.
And ended up doing an ablation and diagnosed me with atrial fibrillation and atrial flutter.
Turns out the woman, known for being all heart on the tennis court, had an underlying heart condition affecting about 5 million U.S. adults.
I ran a marathon. I played, sports my whole life. How could there be something wrong with my heart?
And we often say if you live long enough, you will develop atrial fibrillation.
Sharp cardiologist Dr. Charles Athill says it's rare to see A-fib under the age of 50, but younger people can mistake it for stress or anxiety.
We tend to take a long time to make that diagnosis because we assume that it's often something else and not something as serious as atrial fibrillation.
Candace's doctors found part of her heart's electrical pathway was beating 4 times higher than normal.
It's a very kind of chaotic heart rhythm.
Candace's ongoing health complications sparked her interest in getting into the medical device field. In fact, the insertable cardiac monitor she eventually had implanted next to her heart is from the med tech company she works for. The device, smaller than a AAA battery, zapped the circuit her heart was taking so it would no longer spike and helped monitor her heart activity.
Right now I know what the triggers are and what things I need to do to make sure that I don't push myself beyond the limits.
Turns out heat was triggering Candace's heart rate, and she's not the only one avoiding triggers now.
Since I was diagnosed, my mother and her brother both got diagnosed with atrial fibrillation. So it turns out it was in the family.
You sometimes have to continue to be more persistent when you really feel that something is not right.
2 decades since that first collapse, Candace recently got the cardiac monitoring device removed, and the once uber competitive athlete admits scaling back has been hard.
I got a Peloton. I no longer, because I can't seem to help myself, I'm so competitive, they put me in one of those classes.
It's okay to finish last for once, Candace.
Yeah, I don't like that.
I think it's important for her to share the story just so that people are more aware.
But it's really important, that you listen to your body, go see the doctor if you don't feel good.
Words to live by,
Wow,
right?
yeah.
Certainly thank Candace for sharing her story. The CDC says 2% of people in the U.S. under the age of 65 have A-fib, and that number jumps to 9% over the age of 65. Get this, 130,000 people die from A-fib each year, and the number of people with A-fib is expected to double by the year 2030, so 8 years from now.
Yeah, and you think about it, for Candace, she had that moment where she collapsed running that marathon. But for anyone who's watching this right now, what can we do to see if we can avoid getting A-fib?
Well, that's the thing. You can't prevent A-fib entirely, but you can do things to keep your heart healthy. That includes keeping your blood pressure and cholesterol levels low, and then maintaining a healthy diet and weight. Just having that healthy diet and that healthy lifestyle.
Right.
Super important to try to lower your risk of this.
Which Candace certainly did, and I'm glad that she's accepting she doesn't have to be first place all the time.
It's tougher to just chill out on the hikes and the runs, but going through this process, she's learned what those triggers
triggers are, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
And her message again: if you feel something's wrong, talk to your doctor. This is your heart you're talking about here. We want you all to be heart healthy and safe out there.
Oh, I'm